Talking like we've always known. It's so automatic. You told me that you lost your phone, so I said I would call it.
Well, welcome to the Battle Ready podcast with Erwin McManus, and we have a special guest, my younger sister, who I love so much, Mariah McManus Goss.
Hello.
And before we get started, we got to hit a few things. First and foremost, if you wouldn't mind, can you please go to iTunes and rate and review this podcast? Do what you do. And if you listen on Spotify, I want you to cross over to the dark side, and I want you to go to iTunes and rate and review this podcast. And I'm excited because this week we charted top 100 podcasts in the US, top 50 in Great Britain, top, I want to say 20 in Australia.
Yeah.
So this is really exciting. And now we have Mariah McManus Goss,
which is going to push us to the top.
Going to push us to the top.
Number one, baby.
You can also follow us on Instagram, Battle Ready Podcast, or email us at aaron@battlereadypodcast.com. Oh, and the intro music was Lasso by Lake House. Here we go.
You have such a great radio voice.
Oh, thank you. I've been practicing.
It's very soothing.
That's so good.
I've never heard you talk like that before.
I just want you to talk like that at home.
I know.
Right? That'd be so good.
Would you get less mad at me, you think?
I don't know.
Well, I just got to
Probably
say,
not.
I love having both my kids here.
We're gonna literally spin the whole time.
Why did they give us these chairs?
We did invite your mom, but she's busy preparing for Mosaic College, and so
Yes.
she was unavailable. And we were hoping, we hope one day we'll get Jake, your husband, with us.
Yes, I was the only person who said yes.
So in other words, we were stood up by two.
I'm it.
others.
Two different people.
But we're so glad to have you, Mariah, because you were our first
thank
choice.
Yes, sure.
And we're doing this special podcast because today
Today
is my birthday.
is
Happy
your
birthday.
It's August 28th. And I couldn't think of a better, more enjoyable thing to do on my birthday than to have a podcast with my two favorite people.
So happy birthday.
Which one's your more favorite?
I
Yeah,
knew you
most
would ask
favorite.
that. And,
Most favorite.
well, I'm still waiting to see what kind of gifts I receive. So
Okay.
and,
Okay.
I'll let you know afterwards.
Well, happy birthday. We
Thank
love
you
you
so
so
much.
very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And you guys definitely made my life more interesting. And
We're
Not
definitely
really a compliment or an insult. It's kind of a thing.
but you've definitely kept me younger and made me older, both.
we've aged you quite well.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. We just thought it'd be really fun to have a conversation about our family, maybe tell a few stories. And Mariah keeps asking, what exactly is this podcast about? And we didn't really have an answer. We just said, just trust us.
Trust us. We'll tell some stories. We'll have some conversations, and we'll get into it.
All right.
And so maybe we should take a few moments and just tell wonderful stories about me.
Oh, we could.
We can definitely
Or
do that.
we could talk about how he's an oppressive vacation goer.
Yeah, we didn't go on vacations probably until like how many years ago was our first vacation?
Okay, wait a minute. I didn't
4
know there was going to be
years
a
ago?
therapeutic session
No,
about my
I
parenting
do-
deficiencies.
We probably didn't go on a vacation until like 4 years ago for the first time.
First vacation 4 years ago, first time. Yeah. I mean,
All right.
like you have to understand, we grew up pastors' kids. So our version of a vacation was going to a beach city that you were speaking at a conference at. And you were like, this is vacation. But then you disappear for a few hours
Yeah.
a day and go and speak, which, looking back, it was awesome.
It's awesome.
But it wasn't much of a vacation for you.
That's true. I think for probably 25 years, I might have been a little bit negligent in the vacation category, and there are different reasons for that. I think in the early phases,
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, tell us the reasons, please.
What's up?
I'm a compulsive workaholic.
Yes. Your thought process would be, why would I go and pay to do nothing?
Yes, that's exactly why. What a horrible thing to do.
Wait. But I called Mariah this morning, and I was like, I'm so glad you're doing Battle Ready, and because we had talked about it before, but it ended up being this was the right time, and then you were super gracious because you just got back in town. You were on a writing retreat, writing for MSC. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean,
Was it a vacation?
no. We went to this beautiful place and it was so nice. And the first few days were like more than we could have expected. It's like you feel like royalty. And then a hurricane hit.
A stage 4 hurricane hit, right? Or a class 4?
Yeah, it got classified as different numbers throughout the day, but all I know was that after the hurricane hit, we had no water, no power, no AC, no Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi.
And you text me and called me and said, hey, there's a hurricane coming. Should we stay? Should we leave? And
Yeah.
and I
Wait,
said,
she
"Just
calls us during the filming of
Battle Ready.
Ready.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we ended up having a conversation with you on air. And then I told you to stay. It's just a hurricane. And little did I know you would have no power, no electricity, no water.
And then
It turned to a mission strip really, really fast.
and then I'm supposed to meet them down there.
So you can have a few days
So
of
you
R&R
go-
and enjoy some time with your sister and friends. And
Yeah, I was really just trying to get writing credit on the album. and because it's a pretty controversial topic between me and Mariah that I was kicked out of MSC pretty early on.
I don't know
And
what you're talking about. You just want people to
And
feel
now-
bad for
and
you.
now- And I played bass on the first tour.
You're
with
not
MSC.
like
What?
very good.
Whoa. Whoa.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Why are we going
that
there?
just
I
cut
thought
right
that
to the
was
heart.
I thought we all knew that.
I thought we all knew that. No one said it out loud. I thought, you've been lying to me for 32
I
years
never
of my
lied to
life?
you. I never told you.
You just
were
led me
good.
to believe I had potential.
I mean, you had sure everyone has potential.
Oh my gosh, we gotta start over.
Well, no, go. You're trying to go down.
Yeah, you're trying to.
To join them.
So basically,
Okay,
the spot they rented
Don't get
a house.
distracted.
They rented a house. They flew everyone who writes and works on the,
Right.
on the team. You guys do this once a year, maybe in a
Mhm.
writing record year, which is awesome. And you guys are on it. Like people don't know. Like when I explained to people what you do, one, you've been a songwriter since you were 16.
Mhm.
Before that, but like officially paid to write music since you were 16.
Yeah.
You moved to Nashville, and then I kind of followed you and hung out with you for a
Yeah.
little bit. What do you mean? Yeah.
No, I'm
You want to go into that when you called me crying, being
You're
like, I can't do this by
self-conscious.
myself?
You're self-conscious. I'm saying yes, we did that together. I had a fond memory of it. Why
Oh
are you
my
upset?
goodness.
Okay, get back to
You're
you.
really-
You're trying to meet them,
Yeah.
and you're
I'm
on
sorry
an
about the
really
airplane.
bass
upset about
thing.
this.
I'm sorry. This is
Okay.
not- I mean,
You're-
it is what I didn't mean
you
for
meant
you to
so
have,
much to that.
I
Yeah.
didn't mean for you to have that reaction.
I didn't realize this was going to end up being turned on me.
No, I'm saying Nashville was a great memory. Keep going.
Okay, so you're on a plane, trying
Wait.
to get to them, so you can get writing credit. Come
So
on.
I'm
We
flying down.
fucking-
So I'm flying
You're
down.
going
I'm
on a
flying down
tangent.
to go join them for a couple of days, which was awesome. We sent some of our team to kind of document and film because we're gonna release some really cool like
Mhm.
MSC videos at some point.
And then Jake
behind the scenes.
flew at the same time, but on a
Same
different
time.
plane.
Yes.
Me and Jake end up being at LAX flying.
But his flight got canceled, so he bought another flight that ended
I
up.
didn't know that.
His flight got canceled in the morning, so he ended up just getting on another flight that was at the same time as yours.
So it ends up being different airlines. He arrives 2 minutes before I'm supposed to land. All of a sudden, mid-flight, or I guess not mid-flight, towards the end of our flight, they're saying, hey, they do all the normalities. Lift your seat up, put everything in the stowaways, get ready. We're about to descend into our landing. And then all of a sudden, we, like out of nowhere, the plane just starts just jetting upwards, like straight up. Like I'm
crazy.
like if I was standing up, I would have been sideways. It was going straight up. And I'm texting with Jake because I still had Wi-Fi. Like, did you land? And I get a text from one of the band people who like came to pick us up, Amy Davidson, from the airport, and she's like, "Hey guys, like I'm here. You guys good?" Jake's like, "Yeah, I landed." I'm like, something just happened.
But it took Jake twice to land, I think.
Yes.
They tried to land, and then they shot back up into the sky, and we're like, we can't land, and if we don't, like, we'll try again, and if we don't make it, we'll go home.
Go home.
So his pilot landed the second time.
Yes.
So my pilot said, "No, I'm good."
Nah.
And this is how I know Jake was in the plane in front of us because he says the plane in front of us had to try twice. I don't think it's safe. We're going back to LA. And in that moment, my heart broke. I was sad. And I just went back to LA. So I literally spent 4.5 hours on the plane, get back
For
to LA
nothing.
for literally
That's
nothing.
the
So you
worst
took an
feeling.
international trip without actually ever landing anywhere.
I didn't
Did you have to go
anywhere.
through customs?
No, they laughed on the
Yeah, like, that would be so
overhead
annoying.
speakers. Hey, so you don't have to go through customs at least because we didn't land anywhere. And I was like, well, and it was an interesting day. Interesting
I'm
day.
sorry.
So anyways, what was the moral of the story?
I don't know if we have any morality to
No,
this story, but
Yeah, it was just I was trying to see you, and then I couldn't get there.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
but you had a few days where, well, by the way, so the moral of the story is you really didn't want to land because you would have had 5 days without water or
Yes.
electricity or
Yes.
any of the
Well,
niceties we're accustomed to in
The amenities
amenities
of life.
in LA.
Right. So back to no vacations.
Yes. Well, what we were saying about the no vacation thing was that you spent however many years of our lives depriving us of vacationing. And this past year, when we went to vacation, we were on a very rigid schedule of sports and
So what we've realized.
activities and waking up at 7 a.m. and playing tennis
So-
and then playing tennis again and then going to
An
sleep.
oppressive vacationer.
I
What we've
was
learned about you.
maximizing our vacation experience.
What we've learned about you is that one, Mariah's being sarcastic. If you hear and she's like, we've never got taken on vacations, you deprived. She's joking, obviously, but now that we're adults and we decide to go on vacation together, it's kind of a fun family thing.
Mhm.
We all go once a year. We go in the sun on the beach. But in 4 years, my dad has turned into like, let's go take some time to ourselves, to a rigid, oppressive vacation father
You've become
who schedules out the whole day.
more competitive every minute you've been alive.
Every
And
minute.
now, how old are you turning?
Well, 62 is the new birthday.
You look incredible for 62, can we just say?
What's
No,
your
thank
secret?
What is your secret? What do you use to exfoliate?
Brutal vacations.
Hours and hours of paddle
Okay,
tennis.
I want to give context because when Kim and I were married, we were really poor,
Yeah, we were so
And-
broke.
and
You were
so,
so
I
broke.
mean, our first year we slept on the floor because we couldn't afford a bed,
No mattress.
and I would say for the first 10 years of my adult income earning era, I never made more than $15,000 a year. So,
What changed?
uh,
What was the thing that changed?
well, I mean, so many different things along the way, but the reason I'm saying that is
No, I think
I grew up in this environment where we didn't have a lot of extra money, a lot of discretionary money. So the only way I could take you guys quote on vacation was as I became more, I guess, well known as a speaker, or more. There was more
as
demand
an
for me to,
author,
and as an
Yeah.
author, and so people would invite me to come, and they'd offer to pay me a certain amount of money, and I would say, "Hey, you don't have to pay me money. Just fly me and my family together, or fly me and Aaron, or fly me and Mariah, or fly." And so
Yeah.
the way I would be compensated is getting to take you around the world, and I would always come back broke. But we had these incredible experiences, and so probably until you guys were 15 years old, I would say that Mariah, you've been to over 30 countries around the world,
she's probably been to more than that.
maybe 40
Maybe
or 50,
40 plus, 50 plus. Yeah.
and you're pretty close to the same.
I'm like in the 40s now because when you started really going in, my first trip
Mhm.
to Tokyo, I think.
I took
I
you
was
to, you went to
7,
Bangkok
6?
and then Hong Kong.
No, but my
Mhm.
first trip was to Tokyo.
It was to Tokyo, yeah.
And I almost got lost on the speed train.
You did, well, you actually, didn't you go one more exit?
I did. You had to
Yeah.
meet me at the exit.
Yeah, because
Which-
we have,
which-
trying to run away.
If you,
I lost you in Tokyo. I should write a book.
You really should
I
write a
lost you
book.
in
I
Tokyo.
should write the book. Got lost in Tokyo.
Yes, and we actually had all these strategies of what happened if I lose you in a city. What happens if we get separated? What happens? And so you learn how to survive in different places in the world, and
You always told me go back to the last place we were.
yeah, and we would both go back to the last place we remember seeing each other, and that's how we would always. And that really came through many times for both of us.
In the
all of
Shibuya
us.
station.
Yeah.
outside.
So I will say, even though we didn't quote vacation, you experienced the world in a way that very few people
No.
in the world have ever experienced it.
Definitely.
And we say the no vacation thing is mostly joking and being sarcastic, but it really you did more than just take us on vacations. You really showed us how to adventure and how to
Yeah.
explore the world.
For sure. And I remember too, like, so much of those trips was sitting, like, looking back at it, I was talking about this the other day, sitting in meetings, which I honestly, maybe at the time wasn't like
Super thrilled
really,
about?
super grateful for.
Wait, I have a story about that, so you go first.
But that was so much of, I think, where we learned what we learned of who you are and how you function and how you think and how to think was because we were sitting in meetings with you, and you never underestimated our ability to think. Even at 6, 7, 8 years old, you always thought, okay, they should be in the room because this is.
Yeah, I always thought of you as small humans.
Yeah, you really never you never treated us like children. You always kind of expected, and I mean this in like the best way. You always kind of expected us to just be able to walk into any room and be able to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in kindergarten when you're going. I want you to tell the story of the first trip we actually went on together internationally. It was supposed to be to El Salvador.
Yeah, I didn't go on that
You
trip.
didn't go on that trip. What? But before we
You
go
should
into
tell that story.
You really
Yes.
should tell that story because
He
that was the
almost got
first international
arrested.
trip because you're a Salvadorian. You're from El Salvador.
And I wanted to take you both to my country.
And
I
to
want-
see your
I
grandparents.
wanted you to meet my
And he had gone on many trips at that
No,
point.
the only trip before that was Tokyo.
Yes. And no,
No, you had gone.
you'd been on a few other
A
trips.
few
with
other
me.
ones?
Maybe
Okay.
not
Because
international.
I
but-
remember I took you to Bangkok and then to Hong Kong. Remember when you
Yes.
jumped on that bed that was made out of
Yes.
wood?
Oh my gosh.
I almost killed you, and
I
I tried to
remember.
stop you. You didn't know that we were sleeping on wooden floors.
Yeah, it was so bad. On wooden beds, yeah.
Beds. So
With sheets
I
on
wanted to
them.
take you guys to El Salvador. I wanted you to meet my grandparents. I wanted you to go to the house that I grew up in. I wanted you to sleep in the bedroom I grew up in. You would be sleeping in the same bed I slept in and
Yeah.
walked to the same park, and it's just so cool. And both of you, I don't know why, but you were both born blonde. All
Like-
right.
like so.
like
you
Mormon
Swedish or
blonde.
Norwegian or
Swedish,
something
Yes.
like that.
Like bright blonde, blue-eyed.
Yeah, well, and at least you have brown eyes, Aaron. But Mariah, you have
Yeah,
these
true.
these green
we don't know where they came
color
from.
eyes, and well, I do know where they came from. Thank you. And but
They came from your grandfather. who
or
had- who
or
had-
your mom, and yeah, both my family and her family have green and blue eyes in them. And but anyway, so you're this blonde-headed, green-eyed little girl, and Aaron's this blonde-headed kid, and I take you to the terminal, and all of a sudden
the
Mariah just
international terminal at
yeah,
LAX.
going to El Salvador,
Going to El Salvador.
and I had maybe longer hair, and
You had a mullet and a beard.
I looked much more international,
You looked like you were from. You honestly looked very Syrian back then.
more Middle Eastern.
You looked
yes.
like you could have been a drug dealer.
I can't help it, that I look that way. But anyway, Mariah starts screaming bloody murder. I
Okay,
don't-
but this is no. I feel like I need to defend my younger self here because I'd never been on a trip.
No, but you also had never really been away from your mom.
No,
Never, no.
and I'm 4 years younger than Aaron, so I was
So,
much younger.
3.5. 3.5.
3.5, 4 years old. No, how old were you?
No, I would have
Five,
been like
5 or 6.
5 or 6. And this
Right.
is the first
Yeah,
time I've
okay.
ever been away from my mom or my
Right.
sister.
So
I'm not, and it's just you, Aaron, and David Arcos, right?
David
yeah,
Arcos,
so you start screaming. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I
Like
want my
not-
mommy. I
like
want my
no,
mommy. No, I'm
like
talking about.
screaming,
I'm talking
like-
Stephen King level screaming.
Yes.
I mean, blood curdling, terrifying.
Terrifying.
And everyone's looking at me. The customs officials, immigration is looking at me.
And this is a huge terminal, and this thing is echoing down the entire
And it looks like
terminal.
I'm kidnapping these two children.
Yes, with your right hand man, David Arcos, grabbing me, being like, "We're good, mijo. We're good. We're good, my son."
So I panic and I tell David, hold on to Aaron. The plane's about to board. I grab you, Mariah, and I start running down this international terminal, trying to get back to security before Kim disappears. And I'm yelling Kim. She's on the other side of security. And I'm able to convince security to let you go back to your mom. So that was your first attempt at international travel. You stayed behind. And Aaron got to go to El Salvador and have that experience.
Which,
And
looking back at that trip and how suspect El Salvador at the time, and oftentimes
there were a few
depending
moments.
on who's in government,
Yes.
the president now is incredible.
Mhm.
He's bringing massive change. It was so sketchy.
Well,
There
we
were-
ended up going again.
Later.
Later,
No,
Just
but
a few years later.
But I'm going to add something here because so that began a series of trips where you said no. So the way I would do this when I was traveling internationally, I would offer you a trip, Aaron, and I'll offer you a trip, Mariah. I said, this is Aaron's trip. This is Mariah's trip. Aaron would say yes every time. You would say no every time. So Aaron would get your trips. And so for several years, Aaron got every single
I
trip.
was living a lavish life of travel.
So he
I
had been
was
to like
a modern gentleman
20
at the age
countries
of
and
8,
Mariah had been to 0. And then one day the light came on in Mariah.
and it
And I
ruined
said,
my
Mariah,
life.
I said, Mariah, this is your turn. Do you want to go? And then you said no. And then Aaron lit up. And then Mariah goes,
Cha-ching.
wait a minute.
I get to go on this amazing trip.
And Mariah goes, wait a minute. Every time I say no, he gets my trip. And she goes, no. He goes, I'm going to go. And Aaron's like, what? And he was just so disappointed.
No.
And he knew his life was changing in that moment. And I was so happy that you had this breakthrough. And after that,
It was a solid decade before I went on another, like,
well, it was only right that Mariah got to have most of the trips from that point
I had to
forward.
make up for lost time.
She had to make up for lost time, and I was so happy she wanted to travel, and she got to see
it
the
was
world.
a dark era.
And so there was a period of time where she had been to far more countries than
Like,
you.
like double, triple the amount of countries, because you just started. At this point, you have written a couple books. You're speaking all over the world. You were going to Europe. You're going to Asia. You're just popping around these different countries. And I was, where was I? In the little
Whittier.
suburb in Whittier, California. Google that.
But so going back to the thing, yes, I never understood vacations because, first of all, because I didn't grow up with wealth, I didn't really have that mindset of you just take a week and go do nothing and pay a lot of money to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, we were experiencing the world, and I found that I was able to do something that allowed us to see the world and experience life. And I thought this was the best combination of things. And it always felt like a vacation for me being with you guys. And
That's sweet. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it didn't feel like
I
that.
was working like a dog.
You would work so hard.
I know.
You really do work really hard.
And but I felt like I was living a dream, and I wanted you guys to be a part of that. And I wanted to put that value in your life, that the world is big, to experience all of humanity,
Yeah.
to see the beauty of the diversity on the planet. And because of that, you two are very different. You're global people.
Right.
You see the world from such a broader perspective. I think it affects your writing, Mariah, and the way that you see the world. It affects Aaron, even the way that you want to affect this podcast, even the way you think about battle rating, the subjects we're going to talk about, the way you guys see politics and culture. It's all affected by being touched by the world. And if I could just share this, I remember one time that you had a little period of time, you're probably 8, 9 years old, and Mariah, and you started really like loving things a lot. And so we took you to Indonesia, and there was a lot of poverty there. And all of a sudden, because these children just were drawn to you, you were like a little light, and just dozens upon dozens upon dozens of children just started surrounding you, overwhelming you. And someone said, I'll grab her. I said, no. I said, this is why we brought her, to be in the middle of this. And you were never the same again. Like there was an entire layer of texture in your soul of compassion and empathy and generosity that we watched almost just like seep into you and come out of you. And so I'm really grateful for those opportunities. And then the funny thing, of course, is there was a certain point where I wanted to go see a part of the world, and I got this terrible invitation. And I said, well, maybe I should take the invitation so I could go see that part of the world. And my executive assistant said, you could actually afford to go there all by yourself now. And I said, what? And she goes, I don't think you realize that you could actually afford like to take a vacation. And I remember when she told me that, it was, Lisa, I actually didn't have it in my mindset that I could afford to take a vacation. I was told the guy keeping this shampoo and conditioner from the hotels.
Oh my gosh.
You do?
there's
Do you
so
do
many.
that?
Yes, I do.
I still do it. It's like compulsive now.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Dad would just say like, take all the little shampoo.
take all the, you come
Your
home with 30
suitcase.
shampoos and these things.
I would use the first days and then save them, and every day when they would replace them, I would save them to come home, because that's how we would have shampoo and conditioner.
But you still have a drawer full of hotel shampoo.
There's some
drawer.
things that are hard to break.
Some things are hard to break. But I do think, like, as we're looking back, and I think people may see us now and think, wow, either they're all really successful, or, you know, you're very generous, and which it's both. You're very successful, and I live by your generosity. But I say that because I think oftentimes when I'm telling people, like, you know, the intro to your life, like, who are you as a person, or who am I as a person, they see kind of the life that we live and the opportunities that we have, and now in the position that we may have in outside of whether it's our church or the speaking world or the music world or the podcast world, whatever it may be. And it was such a far journey. And I think we look back and you really built something for yourself and for us and for other people. And to think that you came from, and I don't want to say you came from nothing, you came from so much, but it was all raw and it was unharnessed and it was potential and it was this mixing pot of cultures and religions and conversations and parents and step parents and even nationalities and coming from El Salvador, Miami, to living in North Carolina, to back to Texas, to LA, and being this pioneer and never being afraid of the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and never being afraid of what it was. You were just such an adventurer, which I think made me become a compulsively fearful person at times because you were never afraid of anything. But I remember being in Thailand, being in Tokyo, being in El Salvador, having like moments where, we could have lost our lives. We could have died.
Mariah almost did in Bangkok.
Yeah.
And she ran across the street and got hit on by a car.
And do you want to talk about that one?
Not really.
Well, to this day I have guilt because the one thing my dad said when we left the hotel is your one responsibility is to look after your sister. I'm like 12.
I'm still telling you the same thing.
I'm 12 years old right now.
He tells me that now.
And all of a sudden Mariah runs across the street, given it was like complicated. Bangkok is super hectic. It's the night market.
It's crazy.
She should have been able to run across the street. It was a crosswalk.
There are people as close to me as you are in front of me.
And behind.
Yeah.
And so she was running from like one group of friends that we were with to another group of friends, really a span of 10 feet, and a car runs the red light and tries to make a turn, and I see my little sister flying, like flying.
I think
across.
you were 10 years old at the time.
8.
Okay.
8 years old, but you were taller than me, I think.
That's a whole other
Probably,
project.
That's a whole
that's
nother
another-
thing. I was underdeveloped. We talked about it in the last episode. I don't want to talk about it again. But I meet people now who are so afraid of dying, and I'm like, man, I have almost died so many times in my life. And I've watched your life and tell the stories of sacrifice, the stories of moments where you thought you were going to lose your life, and you've it's just a different conversation of like, you've lived genuinely a beautiful life. You've never really been afraid of death, though you've been aware that it's close at times. Mm-hmm. How has that changed you living now? Like, I remember at 50, you literally said to mom and to everyone, I'm 50. I don't care what anyone thinks about me anymore. I'm going to just break the rules. Mm-hmm. You started a fashion company, started another business, started an app company, doing commercials, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. What happened at 60? What are you doing now? What's the next 10 years?
Oh, it's funny when people always ask. I would say one thing, whenever you love something or someone, it creates a different kind of internal experience. Like I think I was fairly fearless as an adult until I married your mom, and then I was afraid for her, and I had to overcome that. And then I felt like I didn't really have a lot of issue with fear at all. And then when you were born, Aaron, your first child, all of a sudden I was afraid to die and leave you fatherless. Mm. And then I got past that, and then Mariah was born, and I'd never had this experience. I mean, when Mariah was born, all of a sudden I felt like the weight of being alive meant something different. And so I think there's anyone who doesn't want to live doesn't love something. Like, I want to live because I love you guys, and I love your mom, and it makes me love this life. And so I don't want to ever come across like someone who doesn't want to live. I love life, and I live it fully and richly, and I don't want to waste a moment. And if anything, I'm really aware of the moments I've wasted, and I don't want to waste any. I want to live them fully. That's why I don't like conflict. That's why I don't like when we fight. That's why I hate when we waste.
He's avoiding making eye contact with me and Mariah because we fight.
Yeah. But to me, like, every day you fight, It's a day that's somewhat lost to the beauty of what we were supposed to live, and I feel that really deeply.
So emotional.
I am. I admit it. As I've gotten older, I'm a poet, and a philosopher poet, and that's who I am, and I am okay with that. There's so much I want to accomplish for the next decade of my life.
Like what?
Like I don't always like to say.
Say it. Speak it. Speak into the universe. You never know who's going to hear it.
Well, I feel like now I start thinking in terms of what are the things I want to leave behind that can affect the world for generations to come. And those are some things, and so there's a spectrum of things. I've been working on a graphic novel for 2 years. I'd really like to get it done.
It's really good.
And developed. And I hope that graphic novel is the beginning of several graphic novels that I can create over the years. I still have a real longing to create more art. I still dream about creating films and going back and expressing like beauty and fashion. And I can't shake those things. They're always inside of me. I just always think about them all the time. I do have more books I want to write. But in a lot of ways, I want to leave a way of thinking and behind. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not so much what I think that I want to leave behind. It's a process. It's a way of thinking I hope to leave behind.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping I can do that and spend some time over the next few years leaving that to the world if I can.
You're not going anywhere anytime soon, so we don't have to go that route. But I do think it's really interesting and kind of an unique perspective into your life and how you kind of have achieved what you've achieved. And I don't know.
I also, one more thing, at 62, I really want to develop a step back three.
A step back three. Because you just watched.
I just watched Luka beat
Doncic.
The Clippers, and he did that beautiful step back three. Man, I just thought, you always need to keep improving your game. So I need to develop this step back 3-point shot.
Okay.
And so, I think it's sad when people, 10 years ago, I had friends who were my age who were telling me, hey, it's time for us. We're in retirement mode. We just need to be developing the next generation. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm all for developing the next generation, but I am not in retirement mode. Yeah.
Interesting, because those same people won't give up their organizations to younger people.
Yeah, it's so ironic, And so I want to go out on the front line. I want to go out the way I came in, fighting for the world, and I want to do it together.
That is interesting because it is the way you perceive like organizational structure. You don't really see I think most structures are from the bottom to the top, right? The top down. You really are from the front to the back. And anyone who's brave enough and willing to dedicate enough time and energy and has the ability can stand at the front with you, but you don't expect them, you allow them to stay at the back if they want. And so you're kind of that different leader where I always felt like you're always at the front line. You're never at the top. You never choose to be at the top, you always choose to be at the front. And it's a very big difference. If you really look at it, like you've always been willing to take the first step and always be willing to trust the next person. And you've never been like, it's only me in the front. You've always been like, there's plenty of room for us. It's a line. It's a whole thing. Be here if you're willing to dare and risk your life and jump into this. But talk to us. Talk to us.
I think something that's very interesting about the way that you've chosen to work and position your life is that it isn't the retirement goal. It's not you never worked for money. Even though sometimes we probably wish that you did, or that you had. That was part of the journey for you, and that was part of the blessing and the sort of surprise, I think, to you was that anyone paid you to do something that you loved doing or that you felt like you had to do. And it's sort of the crisis that I think Aaron and I have always lived in is that there's no job sufficient enough for either of us because you've lived with this burning mission to do what you have to do. And so it sort of created this somewhat horrible crisis that I feel like we've had to live in for our whole lives of okay, we can't just do a job. We have to do something that we have to do. What is the thing we have to do? And it's a beautiful thing. It's a gift. I've watched you do it. It also creates total, just
inner turmoil.
It's constant inner turmoil
on the inside.
It is constant stormy waters inside of both of us.
It is dark and stormy inside. And there's a
we
little
say
bit
this
of
with a
lie.
laugh. And
So you
he's
don't
very
want me-
nervous right now.
So you don't want me
Here's
to do
what
a
happens.
battle ready on
This is my
parenting.
thing.
There was some good stuff.
what?
It's
No,
funny
there really
because-
was. No, but hold on.
No,
I want to
okay,
ask you this
sorry.
question because I think there'd be some people that listen to this and maybe share it with their parents. When do you plan on retiring?
Well, right after I take my last breath.
Yes.
So,
But can you walk people through why your mentality is that? Like, why would you see the world like that? Because
Well, I mean, I think the reason people think about retirement is they're living a life they don't want. And so you're working for the day. You don't have to live the life you didn't want. And I always thought it's so dumb to put retirement at the end of your life. You should put retirement like in that sense of like enjoying the life you long for throughout your whole life. And so I make sure I live a life I want to live. So I don't want to retire from it. Just like the word vacation means to vacate.
But
I'm like, I didn't want to vacate my life. I
Yeah.
was creating a life I wanted to be in all the time.
you just found, I know this because maybe 10 years growing up in the church with you as the pastor, becoming the pastor, pretty tumultuous.
Yeah.
And it was not, so like, this is the connection I'm making to the people who'd watch this and go like, I'm just a faithful worker who provides for my family day in and day out. Or
That's awesome.
whether you're a husband or
Yeah.
a wife or a single mom or single dad, someone who just works that job that's like, it's a grind, it's tough, it sucks, it's not sexy, it's not necessarily fun, it's not necessarily joyful. You now being a pastor at this day and age is kind of like a cool job.
But it
You get to-
wasn't.
but it wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me be really
and not
clear.
only
Yeah.
that, like you worked with, and respect to the people who stuck with you, but you worked with some pretty tough people in a pretty tumultuous situation in the ghetto. None of that was glamorous.
Yeah. I want to be clear. The pastoring side of it has always been the work side.
Right.
And it was, it's rarely been the easy part of my life or the part of my life that brought the most intrinsic reward.
How did you differentiate that? How did you make something that was really hard, really fun? How did you find the joy in the mundane?
I mean, there were years that was pretty tough. I mean, for 5 years, I had a twitch in my right eye from the stress I was carrying from pastoring. I'm not really designed the way I see most pastors who do this well. They don't seem to really be affected by all the negativity and all the antagonism. And
They are. They're. I think we still live in a place where you can't lead people if you're honest and vulnerable and going through stuff.
But I
So
do
they
think
are.
one
They
of
just
the-
haven't.
one
They're
of the
imploding.
great things about right now is like it's actually very like cool to be a pastor right now.
Yeah.
Is like
Except for like dating, but it's fine. Keep going.
okay. No, that's a different podcast. But it's good to know that you're even thinking about dating.
Yeah, I thought about it.
We're for that.
I declined.
And but I want to say is like pastoring was really hard. It was hard work, and for years it was the heaviest, darkest aspect of my life. You guys were the joy of my life, and being with you, parenting you, raising you, gave me like that oxygen of going. My life is really good. So no matter how bad it was on another end, being your dad is what made my life worth living. And I'll say that without any hesitation. And so I think that that's the thing is that when other people necessarily were not very kind, I had 2 kids. What mattered to me was, did you love me? Did you respect me? And that for me was important because, there are people who don't know you who will kind of like worship you. And then people who don't know you who will despise you. And if you let either one of those 2 affect you, you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
Because they don't know you, but you know me. And so if you knew me and didn't respect me, that would devastate me. If you knew me and didn't love me, that'd be different. That would be devastating. Yeah. And so that was a stabilizing thing throughout the whole process. And I'd say to anyone is no matter how difficult your job is, or how much you're just like in the grind because you're taking care of your family, you have to find some ways to find moments and experiences that are fulfilling to you. And I've been going through physical therapy because I had knee surgery, and I always end up in these therapeutic counseling sessions with whoever's training me. So
you were giving them the
yes,
counseling.
So this past week, my PT guy goes, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just so driven to make money. I just know it's greed, but it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. And then I told him, I said, you need to stop living your life for money and live it for freedom.
Mm.
And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, because if you're driven by money, you're going to come down to your life, realize you've abdicated all your freedom.
Mm.
But if you realize money is just a vehicle that allows you to be free to live the life you long to live, then money will be a tool. It will not be your master. And I said, I've lived my life to be fully free.
Mariah's inside going, but I'm gonna make that money though.
No, I'm listening.
And no, and because there's a certain break point where there are people who have great wealth, but they're not free.
No.
They just have to have more and more and more, and so they're not
stuck.
free. And there are people who are in poverty, and they have an incredible level of freedom because they've learned how to live their life with great joy and celebration. And there is a break point. I think I think studies show that you need to make about $75,000 a year in the United States to be able to pay your basic bills in a meaningful, reasonable way. But then they found that happiness doesn't increase after that. What's crazy is that happiness actually does increase up to 75,000 because you can eat.
Yeah.
Because you're able to provide.
You provide for your
Send your
family.
kids
You
to
can
school,
have
do the whole thing.
You know, some small niceties like air conditioning or whatever. Or fresh milk.
Or like a second car, or even just having a car.
A car,
and things
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
But there's a certain point after 75,000 where happiness is not related to money, but it's about freedom, about your sense of significance, your dignity. You're doing something meaningful in your life.
Yeah.
And that's, so, I mean, I want both of you to make a great deal of money so you can be really generous. So you can give a great deal of money away.
What?
Tell them the story, the $1 billion story. If you were a billionaire.
I don't know that story.
You remember the story? You asked Mariah.
Wait, I want to say something first.
Okay.
Wait, what is that?
No, right?
It's a really sweet story.
I remember the first check you ever got for writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, it's maybe like, I have a terrible memory. I think one of the worst memories ever, but it's probably like one of my most vivid memories ever. And we were at our house that we grew up in. We were in the living room. And I remember you opening the envelope and it being like this huge thing because it was the first time that you'd ever gotten paid for writing something, which you loved doing. That was one of the things that you felt like you had to do that actually brought you joy.
Yeah.
And I remember we needed that money.
Yeah, so much.
Like we didn't have that money to give.
That money was more than my annual salary.
Yeah, and I remember
it wasn't a lot.
No,
it was
like
not
now in
a lot.
hindsight,
it was like $25,000 something.
Right,
like that.
It
was a
And-
whole year's income for me.
And I remember you don't think that your kids hear, but we knew that there were things that we couldn't afford, that we knew that we couldn't buy any, extra. It was just for food. It was just for putting a roof over our heads. And I remember that first check and that being such a huge deal, and we were all celebrating. And then I remember that you told us that we were going to give all of that money to the church.
Which, if you're listening to this and you don't go to church, you're going to be very confused right now.
Well, I think even if you do go to church, you're pretty confused.
And if you do go to church, you're also going to be very confused.
Because I'd never, we knew that you were generous because there were always people living at our house. There were always, there was always furniture leaving. There was always things being given, and there was always people being brought in and fed and loved on and cared for.
There was somehow always enough.
But I'd never experienced that, at least in my 6-year-old brain. I'm like, well, it seems like what mom and dad are saying is that we don't have money to do anything, and there's money, so why wouldn't we just keep the money? Why wouldn't that money just be the solution to something?
Right.
And even just being a part of that decision to celebrate that you had made money from something you love doing, and then to celebrate that money was God's and not our money, was, I think, a huge mentality shift for us. And I'm not sure that I understood it, because the other checks that came in, it was the same story. And, and on our end, we still were in need in certain ways, and so I just thought that was, for you, always being more generous, that's
sacrificial.
the thing that increased the happiness or the joy for you was let me get it. It doesn't live. It's not mine to keep.
Yeah. And I still remember that moment. I still remember you asking to hold the check.
So I've always wanted money.
and you actually caressed the check.
Oh my gosh.
and then I remember the shocking, the look of shock on your face when I said, we're going to give it all to the church, and having a really important family conversation about why.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's twofold. One was that Kim and I had committed that money before I ever made it. And because we wanted to be generous beyond our capacity, and that made me more generative. And I think sometimes we think, oh, I'll be generous after I'm generative. But actually, I think when you choose to be generous, it compels you to be generative.
Yeah.
But I think the second side of it is I wanted to give that money as a declaration of, this is not all the money I'm ever going to make. This is just the beginning of all the possibilities that are out there for us. And I never wanted to live as if we were limited. I wanted to live as if we had abundance. But there's funny, when you were a little girl, we were driving, I think San Diego actually, and we began having a conversation. We were eating at a Thai restaurant in San Diego, you and me, Mariah.
Okay.
And I said, Mariah, if I gave you $1 billion, what would you do with it?
This is the story. You don't remember this?
Maybe we'll see what happens. I might have blocked it out.
And you said, I would give it all away to the homeless and to the poor. And I said, that's a beautiful thing, darling. But
I do remember this.
But if you give it all away, then you will be homeless and poor. And someone will have to take care of you. She goes, what? But if I have $1 billion, I want to give it all away. I said, Mariah, it would be better for you to invest that $1 billion, so that $1 billion could make $5 billion, so that you could give away not just $8 billion, but you could give away $2 billion and then keep $3 billion.
So you're trying to teach me about the economics.
Economics. And you started crying in the restaurant and going, why won't you let me give away $1 billion?
That was always you.
And I had to find, it's okay, honey. It's
You can
okay.
give it away.
You can give away the whole $1 billion. I'll take care of you.
How old was I?
You're probably 8 years old.
You were young. I don't think I was
Teach me
there.
about
Was I
investments.
there? I don't think so.
No.
I was just trying to teach you that the resources you have are limited if you don't think in terms of how you can optimize them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have $1 billion, think about how to make 10 billion so you can give 8 billion away. So you can keep the 2 billion to make another 9 billion. If you give the whole billion away, then you're in the same situation as everyone else. I realized that it was not a conversation that you wanted to have.
No,
you wanted to give your $1 billion away, and I was trying to stop you.
I think it's funny that you're saying that money that you got from your book, that you had already committed it, because I was in that same situation maybe 2 years ago when we had, a chance to commit something in the future to Mosaic, to church.
Yeah.
And I had written down a number, and Jake and I talked about it, and it was like, okay, this is the number. We have money coming in, and it's going to be more than this. So this will, it was obviously an uncomfortable number, but we were like, okay, we're gonna get more than this, so it's not a big deal. Turns out we got exactly
that amount.
And we were both like, this is super awkward, because
You thought you were gonna get more.
we thought we were gonna get more, and we didn't.
But that
And-
number, as a third-party witness to the situation, it was a very large number.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for us. And
No, for me,
you
definitely.
and Jake
Me
were
too.
one of the biggest givers in our entire church.
Yes, and
And
that
that
was
was the- but that was
was
the
that here to
first-
stay? It was a Foundation
Yeah.
Sunday. It was like it was a big, and you
And
gave
that
it
was
to
the
Mosaic.
first significant amount of money either of us had ever received. And so knowing how uncomfortable I was in that moment, to be like, okay, I literally told God that I'm giving this to him.
But you didn't know it was going to be 100%.
I didn't know it was going to be 100%. I thought, like, in the Thai restaurant, I was going to have some left. I thought I was going to be able to apply those principles. But even for you, all those years before, to have given everything, to be like, okay, I've already committed this and now I have it. It had to hurt a little bit to be like, I could use this money. I need this money, but I've committed this money. And so it just goes to show that, like, being in that position in my adult life, it couldn't have been easy for you to decide that that was God's, you know?
Right.
And-
No, it's a good hurt. Like, it does hurt.
Yeah.
And you know the good that you're doing.
Yeah,
And-
it's super not easy. Not that I've given nearly as much as either one of you have, but I'm as a witness, it's convicting. Going, wow,
Yeah.
these two people who've given massive in faith. And I think anyone who's listening, going, oh, they're talking a lot about money. One, if you read about talking about money, you think about it a lot. So why not talk about it? and I will say
You're
this,
living your whole life
Yeah.
probably to make money. So
And I
it'd be a good conversation to have.
and my best friends that are generous, we all talk about money. And when we were really poor, we all talked about being successful. And now that we're a little bit more successful than we were, we talk about the next level of success we're going to achieve. And we hold each other accountable for those things. I think talking about money and talking about generosity is super important to
But
relationships.
it is interesting that we're doing a podcast that's a family podcast.
Yeah.
And you can't really talk about our family without talking about the way we think about responsibility and stewardship and money.
And sacrifice.
Yeah.
And if anything, to me, it's sacrifice and being a provider is the thing you've always talked to us about. Is like, do not ever be limited by the current situation that you are in.
Yeah.
Know that one, that God has so much for you in the future, but two, like, be ruthless and relentless and kind and peaceful, but achieve and keep pushing. And if you lose everything in the process, you can start over.
Yeah.
You know?
You taught us like if there's a timeline or like a structure of the way that your life is supposed to go, that being, you know, born or alive teaches you, or being in the United States teaches you. You've taught us to defy all of those things. You've taught us that there's no such thing as retirement, really, you know, and you've taught us to make money because you want us to be generous.
Yes.
You've taught us that like everything that society wants to teach us is not necessarily what God is teaching us, or what we can actually that's not the height of what we can experience as a human in this life. That there's more, that there's greater, that there's more, you know, satisfaction, that there's more passion to be had, there's more adventure to seek, there's more places to see, there's more human beings to know. You know, there's greater depth to this life than what anyone could ever teach us. And I think that's probably the best thing you've ever taught us, is that, and probably the hardest thing that we've ever had to like grapple with in our life, is that you've called us to such a higher standard of existence that it gets hard to even exist, because there's this whole other realm of humanity that has been revealed to us by just being your children.
Oh,
It's hard to live normal after being your child and to now being your adult. but I say that and I you know, we talk about generosity, we talk about being a provider, but really I think I got an email this week on our Bad Ready podcast thing, and the person said, you know, I'm just a waiter.
I was a waiter.
And I was a dishwasher.
You didn't make it the waiter.
I didn't even make it to waiter. They hired me on you were going to be a waiter, bartender, and first night it was, you're going to be a dishwasher. and I would go from my which was ironic, because I'd go from my really like glamorous job, working at like a fashion company, dressing really cool, to then having my backpack full of like the normal clothes and getting stuff all over my uniform, and like dishwashing every night from like, you know, when I left the other job to like 3 a.m. And you taught us that nothing is beneath us, that whether you're cleaning the bathroom or on the platform, you're never going to stop cleaning the bathroom. That there's this thing about you that you teach us humility in a way. And I think I lack humility in a lot of moments. I'm looking to Mariah. I lack humility in a lot of moments. But you've taught us this thing that nothing's beneath you. And I think maybe if anything that I've learned is that like, because nothing's beneath us when it comes to work, when it comes to drive, when it comes to like how do you achieve something, it takes a lot of the awkwardness away. The embarrassment of like, well, I lost this thing. Like, no, I'm proud that we had nothing, because we have the roadmap to being successful again and again. And you could have been so much more successful if you had been willing to throw a few more amens, hallelujahs, and spoke to Christians the way Christians want to be spoken to, not the way that you feel like God called you to speak to people. Right. And that's always been the thing. You sit down with us. What are you laughing at?
It's just true.
It's very true. It's very true. And you face the same things. You know, you could probably do some things differently and top the charts in the Christian world but you have no interest. You have the interest of creating amazing music that's going to challenge people.
No, she has this tension. She wants to
does.
top the charts on her own terms.
Well, isn't that what you taught
Definitely.
us?
That is what I taught you.
It
Everything
is.
on your own terms.
Strive for greatness, never conform to the standards of others.
But that's the thing is that you.
And wait, but hold on. I just want to no, because if the person listening and they're cynical and they're like, well, what do they mean that they're just not acting like everybody else? Like, no. There is literally a roadmap when you sign a book deal, when you sign a record deal, when you sign a podcast thing, that shows you how to be successful with Christians. They say they don't want complex, they don't want intellectual, they don't want deep, they want easy, simple.
Actually, the phrase
encouraging.
is low hanging fruit.
Yes. So if you're listening,
yeah.
They think you're the low hanging fruit, and we refuse to accept that for you.
Yeah, and for us, like
We refuse because we refuse to accept
Yeah.
it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna get in a lot.
Yeah,
of
I
trouble.
remember sitting down with my agents or
Me
my
too.
former agents, and they flew out to my house and they said, hey, if you want to be a bestseller, if you want to sell millions of books in the Christian world, you got to write low hanging fruit, and your books are just never going to sell like that. And it's, and they go, here's the subject. If you write on prayer, relationships, like faith, they're like code words. And if you write those, you're going to sell a lot of books. And not that those subjects aren't important. They're just not the
they
things
are.
that I feel compelled to write about.
Yeah.
And-
There's never been a need for any of us to like be successful with a certain group of people.
No.
And I
No.
think that that's been the like
I've tried.
I know you have. And that's hard because you want the acceptance.
I do.
And we seem to refuse to help
Yep.
you get it. But
I'm the bridge that no one wants to drive on.
because we just keep lighting the bridge on fire.
But
Yeah.
someone asked me when I was your age, maybe just a little bit older, how are you able to not care what people think of you? And I said, oh, you completely misunderstand me. I care so much. And I said, you're looking objectively at my choices and you think I don't care. That's how
Yeah.
bad I am at it. Because I wanted to be accepted so badly, it hurt. And I just couldn't compromise my inner compass. But I wanted to say, imagine how bad it would be if I didn't want to be accepted.
Well,
Yeah, can you imagine?
I really did. I just couldn't. I couldn't get myself to do what was needed to be accepted that easily.
Okay, wait, Mariah, you can speak to this. There's always a moment in one of Dad's messages where we know he's gonna offend everyone in the room.
Yeah.
Like when we're out, like in Mosaic, they're pretty used to it because there are people, they're home,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of guests always, but like who just kind of walk in, but they kind of get it. They get how it is. But when we go to like a Christian conference or we go to like even like a mainstream
Yeah,
world,
we stopped doing that. We couldn't handle it anymore.
what, being in the room when he speaks?
Yeah, like at certain
yeah.
places.
Yeah, because I mean, there's been rooms where I'm like, we got to go now.
You know what?
We're not gonna make it.
Yeah,
out.
sometimes, Mariah, you come and said, I want to come in there because I know it's going to be controversial. I used to
It's
love
like
it.
no, I think it's
There's been moments where I'm like, do we not like having friends?
I think as we've gotten older and we've started to like people. Like I think
Yes,
when we were
find-
younger, it was so clear that there was like a difference. And we were so clearly like, okay, we 100% are like behind, our dad. And we're 100% like behind his thinking and behind his method and behind his crazy.
You are.
And
We are now. We are.
no, but then there was like for the first time there were so many people that we actually liked
Yes.
that were becoming
Yes.
pastors or that were that were surrounding us,
Yes.
and especially that were like more your age, that were like that you were looking up to, that you really cared about, that you cared about us being friends with. And I think that it was really an important shift. I think it was important for you to learn how to play nice and
No, but those
for
guys.
you to but I'm just saying, like, I think that there was a shift for us. Like there are certain rooms that you walk into, I'm like, offend everyone, and then let's like run in a car and get out of here and not check Instagram or check anything. Like let's just drop the bombs and go. But there are certain places that I think it's mattered, like, okay, maybe the method could change just a hair to keep our lives just a little bit.
Well, maybe there might have been a little bit of like, might have been a little bit like post-traumatic stress disorder where I was so used to fighting for so many years that suddenly a generation began to emerge that embraced our
fighting,
message
yeah.
and loved Mosaic and loved the message of Jesus, the way we're communicating it. And suddenly we realized, oh,
We don't have to fight anymore.
they're actually cheering us on. They're actually jumping
Totally.
on the tribe and moving forward with us.
Because we're so different.
Totally.
But you can generally be creative and be different and think different and be with us and be in our tribe and be in our family. And family doesn't have to all look the same.
Yeah.
And-
And ironically, we don't need people to agree with us. We love...
I want some. I want some people to agree with us.
No, I think you can actually like walk together and be on the same team and love each other and fight for good together and still like disagree about different stuff.
Totally.
You know, I think that's a part of I think the uniqueness of Mosaic.
Yes. This is the uniqueness of Mosaic. And I have the story to top it off.
Okay.
I got connected to someone by one of our other friends, one of our mutual friends that we met in Colorado randomly in a coffee shop.
Yes.
He owns a really cool company, started a really cool company. And he was telling this person I didn't know, I was like, how do you know him? And they were like, well, we were talking about church because I had a cross around my neck. And he goes, oh, if you go to church, you have to go to Mosaic.
Oh.
And she was like, no, I already have a church. He's like, yeah, but it's not Mosaic. And he's also not religious. I think he's an atheist. And also like born in Italy, the coolest guy, born in Italy from the Middle East, left Iran and now is in the US and live in LA and the whole family and the whole thing. And they back Mosaic so much harder than I think we would even. And she was like, no, you don't understand, not like Mosaic. And he was like so persistent and like maybe slightly offensive on our behalf. And it was just super cool. And I think that's the thing is like, we don't do it for like the popular love. We do it for that guy who's like, maybe he'd never accepts Jesus in his life. I believe he will, but he would have never come to church if we weren't super different in our ideology and our thinking and the way that you have built this community and built this tribe and built just the way you think. And I'm grateful.
Totally. The reputation of Jesus is very different because of you. And even just like we were laughing about this the other day because like LAFC is obsessed with you and like
yes, they
like brought you this like really, really special pair of shoes because you are like making a difference in the city, right? And they love you and we love them, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, the Lakers may have been talking about you on, the game the other day. About
locker room chat.
The talk that you gave when Kobe passed. Yeah. And then the Clippers want to send you, like all the stuff. There's all these different things that we love, that we loved before there was any relationship. And except for the Lakers, we are starting to love them now. But that you've changed the reputation of Jesus in the city, that people like love you and then they realize that you love Jesus, and it's this open door, and it's become even just like in the last couple years of your life, it feels like all those doors are being like kicked down
just
in every relationship in this city and all over the world is being open to you because of your sort of strange and different way of thinking and the way that you wanted to say that you were saying that you want to change a generation's way of thinking is exactly what's happening because people are starting to understand and embrace and adopt the way that your brain works.
I don't think we could close on a better note. So I want to just again, happy birthday. We love you so much.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Dad.
you guys so
It has
much.
been an absolute and incredible honor to have you, Mariah McManus Goss, on our podcast. And I hope that you will come on more.
We'd love to
Sure,
have you more.
let's do it.
But
That did not feel sincere.
no, that sounded like it's gonna be hard to get you on here again.
We'll see.
but I want to say this is that's what this podcast is. It's a roadmap to how to think, how to change your thinking, how to challenge your thinking, how to think not just on the left or the right, but to see both sides and to continually move forward. That's what this podcast is. If anything, I hope that 100 years from now, someone finds this podcast and goes, this is how Erwin McManus taught the world how to think in a different way, and then had fun on it as well. So if you're listening, we're grateful that you're listening. Any last words?
Best gift in the world is you two. Looking at you, hearing you, knowing how It makes a difference in the world. And we'll have to get your mom in here one day.
Yes.
And Jake on here as well. And
Yes.
And if you're listening, if you're a parent, I just want to encourage you to not use your work as an excuse to not be a great dad or mom. And the greatest gift you'll ever receive is to have your kids grow up and actually watch them want to be your friends. And when your kids want to be your friends when they're adults, you can feel like you did a good job. Even though they're still dysfunctional and neurotic.
That's almost a compliment.
I'll be the dysfunctional one. You can be the neurotic one.
And I think parenting is always an imperfect art because it's only imperfect people doing it. So it really is about love. And I can say I've loved both of you every second of your lives. And can't wait to see all that God is going to do in your lives going forward. Anyway, thank you so much. This is a great birthday gift for me. And I love you both.
Love you both.
Love you.
Love you. Okay. Review this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and share the podcast. Follow us at Battle Ready Podcast on Instagram, and you can email us at Aaron@battlereadypodcast.com. Okay. Bye-bye.